Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Welcome to another episode of Chatter from the Vox. We are joined tonight by a very special guest. We normally try and do this on Mondays, but we've moved it to a Sunday this week because I have a guest staying with me over the weekend. You can already see him on the screen. We're joined by one of our amazing Patreons, American Rob.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, good, dude. So we told you all that what we would try and do is once a month-ish, we'll get one of the patrons on the channel. And I thought, well, he's flown over from America. I am fatigued. I'll explain. He's flown over from America to come for the Platinum Patrons barbecue. And that's some feat already, right? So I thought, well, screw it. If you're going to come and stay with me for the weekend. And then on the Sunday and Monday, we're going to do a Battle Report film and we're going to do a podcast. So we're doing the podcast tonight. We've just set the table up ready for the Battle Report fresh in the morning. And Rob will leave us at some point tomorrow, sad face, and eventually return back to his colony. So we thought we'd bring you on and do a live podcast, because why the hell not?
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Rob's always asked about how you can do more from the States, and it's quite hard from Massachusetts, right? But once you're here, we're going to abuse it. And I think we've convinced him to come back each year. I think he thinks that the $1,600 plane ticket's worth it.
It was decidedly worth it, even after the 23 hours with all the delays. But by early Saturday morning, I decided it was definitely worth it.
All right, okay. After the Desperado night. Yes, we're here doing a live podcast now, and actually it's quite a good one because we didn't have a topic. What I was going to do is get patrons to come on once every month or so and pick the topic. And GW dangled us that beautiful carrot over the last 2 days. We're live on Sunday as we're speaking. It's Sunday the 4th of August. And yesterday, GW dropped all the announcements for the new Space Marine stuff. Yeah. I say new. Some of it's updated codexes, some of it's new models. We were chatting about it last night when we had our big barbecue. All of us was drinking Whistle Pig Rye around my gaming table. And then today they've also announced that these things are going up for pre-order in 6 days' time. So next Saturday this stuff's going to be up for pre-order. Yeah. And I thought it'd be interesting, not just to chat about what's coming out, but we've got some other things we want to talk about, like how Marines could work in the future, what we would like to see them do, etc., etc., etc. So expect normal Warhammer hilarity for us to screw off on different tangents and not actually manage to talk about the topic we've told you we're going to talk about. That's pretty standard for us, right? Clearly, we're live on Twitch as well, so we have a live chat that will interact with us, and when Rob's talking, I'll be reading it and making sure we try and answer questions or talk to people. So if you want to join us join us on Twitch and you're watching this on YouTube, you can head on over to Twitch, search for Warhammer Liam, and the page will come up. Hit follow. When we go live, it should notify you. Alternatively, if you don't want notifications on Twitch, you can follow us on Facebook, and when we go live, Facebook also notifies you that you've gone live. And failing all of those, if you're a lonely person, you want to come and join a group of absolute hobby legends, you can become a patron of the channel, and you get, for $2 a month minimum, you get into Discord, which has got a huge community of 40k and AOS and Bolt Action and D&D lunatics. They're the most amazing bunch of people I think I've ever had the pleasure of talking to about the hobby. And that will notify you as well. If you do love what we do here, if you love the live chat stuff, if you love the battle reports we do, you can also head on over to www.deploymentzone.tv, subscribe to that. That's Winters and my website where we put up 40k content weekly. And there's currently a campaign going on which is between Winters and Say Hi Paul. Lots of positive feedback for that as well. So that's all that normal stuff done. Like, we've done all the admin stuff now, Rob. You can talk.
I don't know if people want to hear me speak, but sure, I will give it a shot.
No one's here for me. Let's put it that way.
Of course, everyone's here for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Liam, we were talking earlier, we were discussing what the implications were for the fact that you're now having a Space Marine Codex and with individual subcodices attached. I mean, what's your take on that? What do you think that spells for a change in the way the game's played, if at all?
It'd be interesting to see what bonuses these guys get. So, like, you have the Space Marine Codex, you have like a sub-faction. It looks like you have a sub-faction book now. Now, I'd imagine it means that you're going to have to use one to run the other, right? So I don't think you can get the Ultramarine supplement and not have Codex Space Marines.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're going to need both.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's an interesting move from GW on the off, because that's instantly more bookkeeping straight away, because you're going to have 2 books. I can only imagine that the Ultramarine supplement is going to have chapter tactics, psychic powers, relics, wall or traits, and I don't think you'll see extra units, with the exception of Galliman, Tigerius and stuff like that. So I don't think it will have duplicate books, so I think you're going to have both.
Yeah.
Which is a greedy GW move, because they're selling you 2 books, basically, let's be honest. But what I'm very interested to know is, and what I think we might see, is that you have an overriding tactic or ability for being a Space Marine, and then you have a sub-ability for being an Ultramarine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so, because it said you pick basically 2 traits. I think it was in the description, it mentioned something about 2 traits.
Yeah.
So to give more flavor. And I'm just not wondering if it's an attempt to focus more on giving flavor to the Space Marines to seem very generic, where the only distinguishing feature between a Space Marine, a Raven Guard, White Scar, was their just chapter tactic, and some of which were not particularly very good.
Downright crap, some of them.
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah, they're absolutely vile. I mean, let's not even talk about the Grey Knights who make me want to cry. But I think this is a way to give them flavor and depth. But I also wonder if it's a way that they're going to start differentiating, because we have all these new Primaris Marines, we have the Phobos Marines, we have the new Phobos vehicle, we finally have a Primaris Rhino. It only took them 2 years. But I wonder if it's going to be a way to differentiate, if they're going to move to differentiate tactical Marines from Primaris Marines in a way other than they're just one wound less efficient Primaris.
Yeah, so we had a chat about this earlier, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like, at the moment, Primaris Marines and Tactical Marines, Primaris Marines have made Tactical Marines null and void unless you're nostalgic. So if you're nostalgic and it's lore-based and you love your original mini Marines and you don't want to give up on them, then people will play them. But competitively, or even just efficiency on the tabletop, normal Marines that are a tactical squad just don't offer you what Primaris squads offer you. They're just not the same. And the points cost is too similar for you to think about taking normal Marines. So you suggested that maybe with the new Codex release, they're going to... there's two trains of thought here. The first is Rob's train of thought, where they're going to use the new Codex to streamline what they offer an army. What tactical Marines offer an army. Which is super interesting. Like, I always thought that one of the ways they could have solved the mini Marine problem in the very instance was by making Intercessors elites. And then you have to take tactical Marines.
Yeah.
Not saying that's a good idea. Not saying that fixes anything. But I'm just saying that at the moment, when you have Scouts, tactical Marines, and Intercessors, you just don't have any need for that middle ground. You have your light Scout troops, or you have your Intercessors, or your bosses. And even then, they're not the best in the world. They're just better than tactical Marines are for what they do. So it's interesting that they might do that. They might create some sort of niche for tactical Marines that makes them more usable. I'm not sure how that would look, though.
I mean, maybe it could be... so there was that whole was it the Angels of Death keyword that we saw in the leak from the... so maybe they're going to redefine what it means to be a Marine. So right now we've seen Bolter's Discipline come in. We've now seen the new charge rule, +1 on the charge. I wonder if they're going to sort of have them be the last of a dying breed. Maybe they have, like, they can't fail morale, or some feature that would make them...
I do really want to know what that Angels of Death thing is.
Oh yeah, that's been bothering me since that came out. And now seeing that we have these subcodices, I don't... I mean, do you have any idea what you're thinking it could be? Is it an amalgam of all the traits?
So that's what I'm thinking. So they said in the community release yesterday, they said that Bolter's Discipline, along with something else, which I can't remember what it was, and this new combat rule. And if you don't know what we're talking about, it's basically released a new rule for all the Astartes units. That means that if you charge or you perform a heroic intervention, you get +1 attack. And that's for, they've confirmed that's also for Space Wolves, Blood Angels, which is amazing for Blood Angels and Space Wolves, actually.
Yeah.
And it's also for Chaos Heretic Astartes, which means it's insane on World Eaters. It's already incredible there. So that's a new rule. So there's like 3 new rules that they've brought in, from what I can gather, for Space Marines. And I think that what's happening is all those 3 rules are going to come under the subheading of Angels of Death. And that's what they'll get, I think.
I think that actually makes more sense than an idea that Primaris units will have a separate set of skills. The easiest and most logical answer is they've cleaned up the data sheet by saying Angels of Death covers all these rules for every Space Marine. A little piece of me would love to believe that they have some sort of special way of fixing the mistake in the sort of the lore and fluff and mechanics of a tactical Marine, which is an overpriced unit between a Scout and a more efficient unit. The other thing that I liked about the new release was they made it perfectly clear that the Blood Angels Codex and the Dark Angels Codex, one of the biggest deficits in the Space Wolves note was there were certain units they couldn't take. There were Primaris units, they weren't available to them. This fixes that. Now all these units are available to every single Space Marine chapter, any first founding chapter. And I'm now curious and they were saying that it appears in each subcodex, if I'm not reading too much into it, that you'll have all the Ultramarine and their successor chapters. And I wonder if the successor chapters, if I could speak English.
No, you can't.
No, I can't. I'm American. What do you want me to say?
Exactly.
I'm on a British podcast. So if we could find if they're going to actually designate what those are and see what we can do.
Yeah.
You know, if they're going to be more specific subchapter, instead of successor chapters will actually have more flavor rather than being like...
what I'm assuming is, this is what I mean, what I'm assuming is, and I don't know, is that the Ultramarines will have an Ultramarines trait, and then you will drill down perhaps to subchapters within the Ultramarines that will gain an additional trait.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll get an Ultramarines trait that's generic, and if you're pure Ultramarines, you get an additional trait. And then if you go into one of the... And I'm going to be really honest now and say I don't know any of the Ultramarine successor chapters, but you go into a successor chapter, maybe they get a bonus. So Blood Angels is a good one. So you've got Blood Angels, you've got a trait. And if you're pure Blood Angels, you get an additional trait. But if you're not pure Blood Angels and you're Flesh Tearers, you'll get the first trait, and then you'll get your Flesh Tearers trait.
Yeah.
Or if you're Blood Drinkers, I think, or Soul Drinkers they're called, you get an additional trait. And that way, you are giving multiple traits to Marines. So you get your Home Parent Founding Legion chapter trait, and then you get a next trait depending on where your sub-faction drops. So whether you are a successor chapter or just a pure first founding chapter, you will still get an additional trait. Because you don't want to punish people for wanting to be pure Blood Angels.
Yeah.
So they're still going to have another trait if they're pure Blood Angels. One thing, it gives you a lot more flavour to Marine armies.
Oh.
If the traits are decent, then it also means you've got a lot more flexibility in what you might see people bringing. Because at the moment we tend to see Ultramarines, and that's kind of about it, right? So I like the idea that you maybe by using these traits. So what we've seen GW do historically in the game so far in 8th edition, when they want to balance the game or improve or nerf things, is simply change points. Yeah. There's a couple of little rules changes here and there. They do change rules to specific units, but otherwise they just nerf the points, or they increase the points, or they drop the points depending on how the unit's performing. And that's what Chapter Approved does. It's a massive list of points that go up and down. And what this could potentially be is them trying to address a problem that currently exists in the game without just doing points, but by actually giving them more in terms of traits and abilities. There is a little bit more admin involved. It's mildly more complex on the tabletop because you're going to have to know what your tactic is and what your sub-tactic is and all that kind of stuff. But I'm hoping that's what they're doing, because it might encourage people to take things other than Ultramarines, because they can do this trait where they're Blood Angels and they get +1 attack, but then you go down to +1 to wound, but then you go down to Flesh Tearers and you get an additional 2 inches on your charge or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you can synergize these buffs and bonuses to make your Marine more fluffy for what you want, more efficient for what you want them to do. And I think you could see a lot more flavour in Marines if you do that.
And I think they specifically need that, because a Marine is a Marine is a Marine. And with that specificity, though, I think it also gives you more dynamism, that you could see multi-chapter Marine armies, and they would play differently and still play fundamentally as Marines.
Absolutely.
Because as it is right now, if I take Iron Hands, Chapter Tactics, and Ultramarines, the only real difference is the Ultramarines get, assuming I don't take Bobby G, is they can fall back and shoot, and, you know, I have a 6 of Feel No Pain. There's fundamentally no difference. But if they had that sort of additional subset of tactics, and hopefully, for the love of God, before I go off on a tangent, will Chapter Tactics please apply to vehicles? Please, whatever you do.
That's something I really want to see, actually, in all seriousness. I've always said that it needs to be the same across the whole board of 40k. So either it applies to vehicles, it applies to troops, bikes, and dreadnoughts for Marines, and therefore it applies to troops, bikes, and wraiths or something for Eldar, and I don't know. But the easiest way to fix it, rather than trying to find those unit niches within each army, is just to say it applies to everything. Yeah, it applies to everything. Full stop. There will still be some exceptions, like for the Necrons, it doesn't apply to the Triarch stuff, because Triarch sits outside of the Tomb World and outside of the Dynasty, because they're like the law enforcers of the Necron world, so it would never apply to those. But for every army otherwise, without those sorts of those sorts of exceptions, just apply it to every fucking unit. Why is it so hard? It's not like giving chapter tactics to Space Marines is going to make them super powerful. Giving Ultramarine Predators the ability to fall back and shoot, they're already shit. It just makes them a bit less shit. And let's face it, when you've got an Eldar Fire Prism, which has got the fly keyword, it can do it anyway.
Yeah.
So we can already do that as Eldar Skimmers. So it's not that broken to give... And a Fire Prism is a significantly better unit for its points than a Predator. So it's not that bad to give it to the Predator. You might as well give it to the Predator. I don't get why they don't... Oh, I'm fucking angry.
A 6 of Feel No Pain, on an Iron Hands vehicle would be an amazing, unique ability. So it would encourage an Iron Hands player to run more armored units on a table, and that army would feel differently than an Ultramarine army. But I guess the other part of that, and I just completely lost my train of thought, that would require me to think on my feet, and it's not like I do that. So excuse the tangent, but.
We do this every week, by the way.
I know, that's the frightening part. I don't know how you do that. I can't string two cogent thoughts together. But with the Marine units, if the chapter attacks apply to vehicles, that would be great. But also, if Marine units could simply have better synergies, and this is something you and I were talking about earlier, right? That the early codexes that came out, like Chaos Space Marines, Grey Knights, Space Marines, Chaos Demons, they were still sort of building what 8th edition was going to be. And what we saw was that big meta shift with the Drukhari release, where you had sort of 3 or 4 distinct armies in one codex. And maybe this is the way of doing that for Space Marines.
So, I know our most of our watchers don't like us to talk about tournaments too much. I get that, but actually, what happened with the Drukhari within the tournament scene was very interesting, because a lot of tournaments out there were not nerfing. They were restricting list building to single faction and single sub faction. So if you took Marines, took Adeptus Astartes as your faction, for example, you had to select a chapter tactic, and your whole army could come from that chapter tactic. So Ultramarines or Iron Hands or Iron Warriors. Same for Chaos. If you picked Black Legion, your whole army had to be Black Legion. You couldn't take Black Legion and take a Spearhead or a Vanguard of World Eaters. You couldn't do that. It all had to be Black Legion, and that was a precedent that was set by these single faction events at early stage. And most of us really supported those single faction events. I quite like the fact that you're encouraged to take an army of all Ultramarines, or an army of all World Eaters, or an army of all Simhan Eldar. I love that sort of stuff. And then they dropped the Drukhari Codex. And what they did within the Drukhari Codex, if you aren't aware, if you're not a Drukhari player, is you are Drukhari, but within the Drukhari Codex, it's split into basically 3 factions. Not even necessarily sub-factions, 3 factions. You've got Homunculus, Covens, Witches, and Cabal. So if you wanted to take a Prophets of the Flesh spearhead with a battalion of the Cabal of the Black Heart, you couldn't do it under those tournament rules. But what they did, so by tournament restricting you to just taking Ultramarines, they don't nerf your selections from the books with the exception of named characters. Yeah. You can take anything from the book. But by nerfing you to just Cabal of the Black Heart, you basically nerf a player to only being allowed to take a third to a half of his codex. So he couldn't take any, like Covens of the Flesh, he couldn't take any Witch Cult stuff. So that made tournaments then have to suddenly put in this sort of disclaimer that if you're a Drukhari player, actually you can take, and most of them still wouldn't allow you to take all 3. Most of them would still allow you to take just 2 of the sub-factions within the Drukhari Codex. I mean, GW have proven that they don't want people to be mono-faction. They're quite happy for you to be all different factions or sub-factions within your army. So they doing that with the Drukhari Codex, which kind of went against what was the current tournament meta for single-faction events, was very interesting. And this could open that gate up a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think someone in the chat before the stream started noted this is the end of 8th edition.
Yeah,
this new, and and we were asking, when we discussed this earlier, I was wondering if this is version 8.5.
Yeah, literally what you called it, right? 8.5.
Yeah, I think this is 8.5 because we've now come full circle. Every army has this codex, and in my opinion, every single codex has gotten better. It has become more streamlined in what they're trying to do, more focused, more synergies, more natural union between the armies or the chapters or clan cultures, more distinctions. And with that, each presented new unique challenges to both the player and opponents, and in list building, each in addition to beautiful models, each of which is an element of the game, one part of the game that appeals to all of us. So I'm not wondering, now that we've come full circle, this is like a bit of a reboot, taking what they've learned. And I'm not wondering if maybe tangenting again. This is going to happen. I'm segueing.
Yeah,
I'm going to signal.
It's natural.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if Kill Team is an experimental, is a sandbox for the next edition. So we have sort of terrain features on Kill Team. We have different distinctions in Kill Team using terrain. So maybe now that they've run full circle through each codex in developing an army, and what it does and how it operates, gotten better at it, and now resetting the earlier ones. If once we go through the cycle again and a new edition comes out, we'll take what they learned out of Kill Team and the changes made to Chapter Approved and come out with an entirely new edition.
It's really interesting, actually, that because you say about they've learned about the armies and they're going to get better at what they're doing. Now, the only one we've seen that from so far is the Chaos Space Marine Codex. So when the Chaos Space Marine Codex version 2 came out, I would 100% agree they have added a lot more flavour to it. They've made it stronger without too many major changes to the core of the Chaos Space Marine Codex. Some minor changes to stat lines of obliterators and points of obliterators. Some extra psychic powers with a new Psyker. Some extra relics and bits and pieces like that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, with what pissed me off with version 2 of the Chaos Space Marine Codex was there was a load of extra stuff that they dropped in Vigilus Ablaze that, for me, just put it in Chaos Codex. This is what's really starting to get to me with GW at the moment. Just put it in Chaos Space Marines version 2. All this successor Legion Renegade chapter malarkey that they put in Vigilus Ablaze, there's no reason why those extra 4 or 5 pages couldn't be in Chaos Space Marines version 2. There's no reason at all. In fact, by doing it the way they've done it, they have literally shown that they're only interested at that point in making some extra money by selling a second book. And I know it sounds cynic, and I've just gained GW support, and this is I want to prove to people as well that I will always give an honest review. That's a horrible move from GW. And as much as I love, and I do love this successor chapter malarkey that they're bringing out, I don't actually mind the fact that you've got a Space Marine book and then potentially a White Scars book that sits behind it. I don't mind too much that you have both those books, but that White Scar book better contain absolutely everything you need to run a White Scars army. But you better not have to go to Vigilus Defiant to find the White Scars formation, because otherwise. And the other thing is, if your Space Marine book is now taking all that individual flavour out, maybe that Space Marine book shouldn't be £30 or whatever the equivalent is in dollars. Maybe it should be like £20.
Okay, I am hardly a GW fanboy. Maybe it was a logistical issue. Maybe things went to printing at different times and the proofs had to be approved and the production was already in process and they couldn't add to it. Or possibly they're going to do, I think the Chaos Space Marines 2.0 seems like it was premature. If they had held off and then did the same, because I imagine all those additional units and the successor chapters and the new units are going to appear in when they do the Chaos Space Marines and their Traitor Legions. They are Traitor and Heretical. When their codexes, individual codexes come out. Because I'm assuming they're going to do that to them if they do them to the Space Marines.
But then we're on version 3 as well. What I don't get about this, I mean, don't get me wrong, I get that the GW are a business and the businesses need to make money to survive. But we're seeing record profits from the company. We're seeing record profits to the level where they've just given every single one of their staff a bonus. So they're doing very well as a company. Now, what's the one thing that's, no matter where you are in the world, what's the one thing that pisses a consumer off? If they feel like they're getting ripped off or taken for a ride, you piss the consumer off and they don't want to deal business with a company anymore. Now, obviously, GW are very lucky in the position that they are basically the only company, well, in fact, they are the only company that produces legitimate models for this particular gaming system. So it's not like they are EA making computer games and competing with other companies like DICE or other Project Red or whatever. So GW hold the monopoly on this stuff for 40k.
Yeah,
and they do. And no one else makes legitimate units, models, boxes for 40k. However, that doesn't mean that they should take their players for granted. And the thing is, in the modern world as well, when other engines and other gaming systems are starting to erupt and Star Wars Legions come in and Bolt Actions come in and people are playing other tabletop games as well, it's a really dangerous time to piss your customers off.
And I guess it smacks of the old GW. I wasn't around for the old GW, but I hear the angst. I had entire friends who dropped out of the system and basically rage quit 40k and came back in the 8th edition and are just and were very wary for like the first year as to what was happening. They kept expecting the next ball to drop. And this, I think, you're having, because I think you're an older player. You've been playing this a long time. I'm a noob. So I think it raises that fear that the new GW will turn into the old GW, or it will pull some shenanigans it shouldn't. And granted, we all invest far too much money in this hobby, far more than anyone ever need know about.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Yeah. Now, so ripping us off for another book, it's like, come on. There are ways to ameliorate, though. I think if there's a large enough outcry, if we hold them accountable with it, I'm sure they'll find ways to fix it, though.
I honestly think as well, though, with this book monarchy that's going on. So I'm raging at the moment that there might be 2 books, and there might be one at 30, one at 20, and therefore you're nearly enough double in your outgoings to buy these books. However, there is caveats to that. And in the sense that if they do what they're doing with these Marine books and they charge us what I fear they're going to charge us, which seems like an old GW trick, genuinely, then I'll be a bit angry. And then when we read those books and we look at those books and we realise that what they've done actually is a real hard-working job of fixing Space Marines, that anger subsides a lot. Yeah. And you go, okay, I've paid a few quid more, but they have addressed a lot of the problems. So I'm hoping they do address the problems and they justify and vindicate the decision and what they're doing. I really want them to do that. Like, genuinely want that to happen, because also Marines are crap. So
they are so bad.
They need building. So there's a couple of interesting things as well that I'm looking for in these new codexes. And I will, disclaimer, like I've said already, I haven't received product from GW yet. I know a lot of you think that when we hit a certain stage we'll get that support. Even if we have, I've not got it now. So I don't know this, but there's some things I would like to see. Like we've already said, a way to fix tactical Marines is definitely on my top of my agenda, but there is a lot of discussion in our Discord at the moment about the fact that maybe this is the start of the phase out.
Yeah.
By making them inefficient and not a very good unit, people will slowly stop buying them, and slowly but surely they might naturally phase themselves out. I don't think we'll see them removed anytime soon, but they might naturally fade themselves out, and GW may have learnt a very stark lesson from AOS, and they might not be prepared to another one of their gaming engines to wipe whole races out in one go when people have got massive armies that are worth £400, £500, £600 plus. So maybe what they're trying to do is push for a more natural, slower decline and removal of the model range and of the units from the gaming system, rather than it being forced.
I think they did do that, especially in the lore. You saw that in the lore, that all the replacement Marines, as chapters are decimated, they're replaced entirely by Primaris units.
Yep.
So, and I think this is something that we've joked about, which is that maybe the original idea was a Sigmar of the 40k universe, and that went over so spectacularly well with the fantasy players that maybe they actually were capable of learning and decided this was a poor life choice. So they had to come up with this really badly written fluff. But I think it's more likely with you that they're looking to naturally phase out tactical Marines.
I think so. This is a really interesting discussion that I watched a little bit earlier in Discord, and I've also had to think about myself. Now, AOS, I think the whole thing, if I'm honest, I think was a test bed for 40k. I don't know how many people agree with this, but I think the whole thing was a test bed. Now, with AOS, if you don't know what happened, Fantasy was a massively popular edition, but it was dying. Like, it wasn't doing as well as it was, and people were more interested in 40k. The skirmish type tabletop game was becoming more appealing to people for whatever reason. People liked it. Now, I tried to play Fantasy, and personally I wasn't a fan. I didn't like Fantasy, and that's why I played 40k. I had some very good friends who were massively invested in Fantasy, and I tried to join and play with them, and it wasn't for me. I didn't like the nature of the game and the way in which you had to play. Of course, it came a bit because it used to rank and file and move in blocks, and some people thought it was a lot more of a war simulator and a tactical game. Not denying that, just wasn't my cup of tea. So I preferred 40k. Now, I think with Fantasy, because it wasn't doing as well as 40k, I think what GW did at that point, well, not I think what they did, what they actually did was they nuked it. So they killed the lore, they ended the game, they ended the universe, they destroyed the whole thing. They brought out a new game system, which is called Age of Sigmar, which replaces Fantasy. Part of this, I think, is because it wasn't going very well, and another part of this was because of intellectual property and IP rights. So with Fantasy, you had elves and orcs and goblins. Now, you can't IP those because they exist everywhere. So when they drop Fantasy and ditch it, and they bring out Age of Sigmar, and it's called Oryx, and it's called Elves, and it's called the Kharadrim Overlords that have never existed before. What they're doing at this point is they're creating IP that they can then copyright and no one can touch. So it's a clever business move in that regard. Anyway, they wiped the story, created this new universe with all these new mortal realms, and at the same time released a brand new gaming system. Now, if you have ever played AOS, or tried to play AOS, or looked at AOS, if you compare it to 8th edition, there are a lot, and I mean a lot of similarities. A lot of similarities. And I honestly believe that the whole Fantasy to AOS changeover was a test bed for 40k. And I think what they learnt from AOS is, okay, we ported the game system across, and a load of people love the new gaming system. We trashed the lore and brought out new lore, and a lot of people raged about that. So I think with 8th edition, what they've done is the same process with the gaming system, but they haven't followed the same protocol with the lore. And because I think if you were to... GW turned around 2 years ago, right, 3 years ago, whenever 8th edition launched, and go, right, Mini Marines are gone. What happens at that point?
Oh, it would be mass, right? Nottingham would burn.
Before,
let's be honest.
So before they had proved themselves as new GW, imagine if they'd have dropped that bombshell. It could have killed them before it began. Maybe not. Maybe it would have gone okay. Now, I've always said, like, honestly, from my perspective, I don't like the Primaris lore, and I would rather they just release these as... So Marines have had an armour upgrade, and this is now your Space Marines. And it's that. And if you've got Mini Marines, you can still use them. That's fine. Same as us Chaos players. If you've got old style Chaos Space Marines, you can still use them as Chaos Space Marines. And if you want to buy the new style Chaos Space Marines, you can still use them as Chaos Space Marines. And I kind of wish they'd done that with Marines. I think I would have preferred it. But some people who have lots and lots and lots of old style Mark... I don't know what Mark was it? Mark 7?
It's
Mark 7 power armor, I think?
Yeah, Mark 7. Mark 7 or Mark 8.
So that all those people that have got Mark 7, Mark 8 power armor, they may have been upset that their models are now null and void. And maybe GW thought that at least this way with the Primaris lore, the models are still viable. Not in a competitive sense. We're not talking competitive now. We're talking about the fact that they still have a place in the lore as normal Marines. Maybe.
True. If they had done it as an armor upgrade, I think they feared their sales would fall, that people that were more into kit bashing wouldn't engage with the new models, that people had a substantial investment in long-standing armies that are quite beautiful and they spent hours and years investing time, energy, and money into building them and customizing them, wouldn't want to invest in new units.
Yeah.
But I think they've addressed that by not only introducing new types of Phobos units. I mean, some of these sculpts are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, some of the Phobos units, they're just...
Some of them are incredible, and there's Calgar. But some of them are incredible.
Well, Calgar, let's not... Oh, that's just... that looks like a bad cartoon. It's like someone like a GW employee got drunk and, got on the CAD design machine and was like, let's make him with a power fist jumping in the air,
That's right, Twitch and YouTube. Rob's on my side when it comes to Calgar.
Oh, God. That, I mean, come on. It just... just typhus with the Sylvester Stallone pose over his head like Dance Fever. I just know some of them are so bad, but so many are right on.
We also we did today prove that the new Tigerius model is modelled after one of our patrons, Andy H.
Is so Andy, it's frightening.
Yeah.
It aged Andy, but Andy nonetheless.
Yeah, but still, because the new Tigerius has got a gorgeous sculpt and then a face like a scrotum. Anyway. So there was a suggestion also from Sorcerer Dave. I want to bring it up actually, which is interesting. I've never thought about it, and actually I've always been against it. But he's kind of thinking about it. I think he's kind of right. He says, slightly controversial view: make tactical marines slightly cheaper. Job effectively done. Full stop. So 5 tac marines with a heavy weapon fills a niche that neither scouts nor intercessors can. That's true.
Yeah.
Now there's a couple of interesting thoughts in that regard. So people tend to take. Normally bolter scouts or sniper scouts. Okay, so sniper scouts offer you something that bolter scouts just don't do anymore, because you can pick characters and stuff. And I would argue, are people now taking sniper scouts when what are they called, suppressors? Are they suppressors?
The suppressors, the
big
eliminators.
Do people take sniper scouts anymore when eliminators exist? Because I see a lot of eliminators now, not so many sniper scouts.
But the sniper scouts have OPSEC. And in tournament play, you're seeing more snipers. And I have found that if you mix sniper scouts and eliminators, people are going to focus on the 2-wound eliminators with a 1-up cover save. So it keeps your sniper scouts alive longer. And in this meta that's character driven, having flooding the board with snipers is never a bad thing. And it's pick your poison. Take out the 1-wound tactical scout marine, or go for the 2-wound eliminator with 1-up cover save. But I also think it makes scouts feel like scouts. They're serving a purpose. I think it actually makes scouts fit. As odd as it is, the Primaris makes scouts efficient. They're 1 wound smaller. They fill a very specific role, and they actually match the current progression where tactical marines don't.
And do we think with Sorcerer Dave's comment there about making tactical marines slightly cheaper? He hasn't suggested a points cost. So what's 5 scouts now? 55 points?
55 points for 5 scouts.
And 5 tac marines is 65 points?
Yep.
and 5 intercessors
Is it 85 points? 85 points, I believe.
Okay, that's interesting. So 65 points for TAC Marines, 55 for Scouts. So you're talking about dropping a point per model and coming down to 60 points for 5 Tactical Marines.
But then still the heavy weapon cost.
So which a heavy bolter, 10 points for heavy bolter, you put it at 70 points, you're still a good 15 points cheaper than the 5 Primaris Marines with no heavy weapon. It's actually an interesting concept. It is interesting. That 1 point might make the difference.
It could. I mean, but again, we have the... I guess this is where the fact that I play more ITC factors into my reasoning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and so bear with me, because I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I would still say point per point, efficiency-wise, the Intercessor squad is still more efficient. Range 30, rapid fire, AP -1.
Yeah.
It's still better, especially with Bolter Drill, even if the TAC Marines go down by 1 point. For fluff reasons, or in fun matches, or in Maelstrom, or in Eternal War, it gives you a reason to take and use those Marines you've spent so much time and money on. So I don't know if there's a way to do it. Unless you give them, this books me back to my point earlier, we give them some sort of special rule or special role, the last of a dying race.
Take the way, and how that looks we don't know, but I quite like that concept.
Yeah.
But let's take all veterans of the Long War kind of sort of.
Oh, that would be
something, you know what I mean? Because they're original Mark 7 Power Armored Marines. They're the original Marines. Some sort of veterans type rule to give them a buff.
Like a Death of the False.
Another comment Toby's done, I don't want to keep blowing his trumpet, but he said an issue with TAC Marines at the moment is that their points per wound doesn't compete with Intercessors. And that's the truth. Like 65 points for 5 Tactical Marines. You've got 5 wounds, 3 up save, 5 bolt guns, 24-inch range, strength 4, AP, nothing. Bolter Drill's the same, they should know no fear's the same. Every other stat's the same.
Yeah.
No other stat changes, everything's the same. And then for 85 points, we think, you get 5 Intercessors. So 20 points more, which is obviously 5 models. So 4 points per model, which is quite a hefty, sizable chunk extra. 4 points per model, that's the cost of a whole guardsman. But what you're getting is an additional wound, AP -1, and 6 inches more range. I probably would pay 4 points for that every day.
I pay 4 points for that all day and twice on Tuesday.
Yeah, and actually, when I now think about my original suggestion of dropping them by a point per model, I'd probably still pay 5 points per model for that. I probably would, because I think it's worth it.
Yeah,
absolutely, because by paying those 5 points, what you're doing at that point by gaining just the extra wound alone for 5 points is gaining kind of an additional Space Marine. Because you're gaining another wound at toughness 4 with a 3 up save. Yes, it does mean if you get hit by a 2 damage weapon, that model will still die, but you're paying 4 points currently for an additional Marine in the squad, essentially.
Yeah.
So it takes twice as much small arms fire to drop that squad down. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think that worked. When you said give them something like a Death of the Veterans of the Long War, Death of the False Emperor, some sort of stratagem that makes those Tactical Marines unique on the tabletop, where you throw in a bunch of jump pack Marines with chainswords, in addition to 1 extra attack, they get to fight twice, or it's something to give them that sort of, to show that they are the last of a dying breed, that they are veterans, that they are old, that they are the grizzled old guard that refuse and will remain what they are in service of the Imperium. I think that gives you so many opportunities to be creative, both on the tabletop and in rules writing, if they open it up.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some interesting comments we've had as well, and we're hoping Space Marine 2.0 is the way they will focus on giving other races new models and then update their codex to match. Basically, people are saying that with their new round of codexes coming out, can we hope that most of the races are going to get new models and new upgrades? I sure hope so. Lots of the races out there need it. Marines need it in places, not so much as others. They've had lots of releases, but then you look at Eldar, Aspect Warriors, you look at Flag ones for Necrons, you look at a lot of the model ranges that exist currently still. I mean, you can still, on the GW website, buy lead miniatures for Astra Militarum. You can still buy lead miniatures, they still exist. So I hope we do see that. I would also like to see a new race of some sort, but we've been saying that for the whole of 8th edition so far, and it hasn't come to fruition. Everybody said basically that they would happily. Well, most people have said that they would pick Scouts and Intercessors, and TAC Marines still don't for the slot, even at 5 points cheaper for the squad, which is interesting. So at that point, I don't know how you fix TAC Marines. I do think that in general, Marines, especially your old school mini Marines, I'm going to call them mini Marines. I still think that they they suffer from a toughness issue. Toughness, 1 wound at toughness 4 and a 3-up save does not portray a Space Marine's toughness.
No, it's basically a Skitarii in cover. A Skitarii, I was corrected, in cover. It doesn't make sense.
No, it's not good enough.
No, it's not. It's not. There. This is, I heard this argued somewhere else, and I haven't actually broken it down myself mathematically. Not that I'm a mathematical genius by any stretch, but that it seems that the fundamental mechanic behind GW was everything would be toughness 3 would be the medium wound value, so toughness 4 would work, but there's so many 2-wound models, so many invul saves, so many 2-damage weapons that I think the fundamental mechanic's a little off.
Yeah. However, again, looking through some of these comments, there is a statement I want to make. It's bold, this one. It's going to piss some people off. It just will. And that is, as much as I would love for them to fix Mini Marines, look, as much as we're coming up with all these solutions, my honest opinion, again, disclaimer, I haven't yet seen the book. My honest opinion is, they're not going to fix them. I think when Codex 2.0 comes out, I think they're going to attack Marines will be the same price that they're currently at. They're going to have the same weapon options, the same rule set, with the exception of gaining the extra +1 attack and the bolter drill and stuff. But I honestly think that they are going to be the same. They're not going to change them. And the reason why I think that is because it is my honest belief. We've already mentioned it's my honest belief that I think they are trying to naturally fade them out, and they're trying to do that by a process whereby the consumer is the one that drives the fade out rather than the producer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. They're leaving it for those who like that sort of thing. This is the sort of thing they will like. I mean, that's sort of where they're leaving them. And I think you're right. We will provide you so many better options, you won't want to take them.
Yeah, exactly.
Or we provide you so many beautiful models, you will prefer these beautiful models as an opportunity to express yourself again, anew, afresh. And
it's also been interesting, actually, from a hobby perspective, not from a competitive standpoint or anything like that. It's also interesting to see the reaction to some of these models. So today, after the release last night, I've been checking on the channel's Instagram page and Facebook page and stuff like that, and it's a real 50-50. Like, for example, this new Walker, I refuse, even if it has the keyword, to call it a dreadnought. This new Walker that they've dropped, from what I've seen today, and I'm involved in lots of hobby groups. Like, you've seen it, right?
I don't believe it.
You've seen it this weekend.
He only follows his own Discord. I don't know what the guys. He exaggerates, but go ahead, Liam.
Yeah, I've got like 3 friends, and with my 3 friends, what I've seen is an exact 50-50 split.
Really?
But I had like, genuinely, some people I've shared the picture of that Walker and gone, wow, this thing's gorgeous, I love it. And some people have gone, what is that abomination? And it's amazing that, look, because you've just said, one of the GW tactics is, look at all these amazing sculpts and amazing models we're going to give you. You're not going to want to buy these old, terrible-looking, derpy Marines anymore when you can have this. But for 50% of the people that I've experienced, that is the case. The other 50% gone, what is this abomination? Get out of my face.
Well, it sort of, wasn't that the reaction to the baby carrier, a.k.a. the Nemesis Dreadnought? Like, what is this abomination that you've strapped a Marine to an exoskeleton? They sort of done it, and they give it to Tactical Marine, so everyone can share the joy of baby carrier. But at the same time, if it actually fulfills an interesting role, I mean, although the weapons it looks like what, three heavy stubbers and a heavy bolter.
I have no idea.
Looking at
that heavy bolter that's glued to his knee.
Yeah, that's actually a pistol that it draws out. Someone had said this is from Avatar. I have not seen that because I am a Philistine. But supposedly,
that's one of the few films I have seen. I don't remember it.
I'm not going to ask why. So what I think we're running into is that. If that unit functions and has interesting rules, like if it has an Omnispec and it has like a stealth or cover, or they have interesting rules for it, yeah, it may be ugly, but I can kit bash it to make it look a little better. There's things I could do to make it look better. I also don't think it's a dreadnought. They specifically refer to it as a walker because Liam, when he first saw it, he goes, if they call a thing a dreadnought, I'm done, they're dead to me. So you did, literally.
We were a few drinks in.
I'm crazy. I think when we're like, if that's a dreadnought, I'm done, they're dead to me. Not that I like Marines anyway because they're trash, and then he wandered off. But honestly, I think it's going to be a walker because it says it's a walker.
Yeah, The description did say Walker. They never mentioned it was a dreadnought.
Yeah.
It just is so obviously modelled on the Redemptor chassis, and the Redemptor is a dreadnought, that I thought, please don't do that, because because as a non-dreadnought, as a Scout Walker, I'm kind of okay with it. Like, I wouldn't say I love the model that much, but I'm kind of okay with it. It's not something that I'm going like Abaddon. I know people laugh at me with Chaos and stuff, but Abaddon was such a glorious and gorgeous sculpt that I could not wait to get my hands on that model. And there's been other releases for other factions that have come out and I've genuinely gone, wow, that's really nice. Like, that's really, really nice. I really like the Coruscant Khan mini that have dropped. I think he's glorious. I mean, there's a big missing bit. A big two-wheeled missing bit.
Wait, no. Did he have a bike or something?
Yeah, I think he rode it once in a blue moon.
Didn't like the last 30 some odd chapter masters have that? When he decided he needed to upgrade.
So, and that's another thing, right? So this is another thing that's starting to irk on me. We love narrative and lore here. That's what we're all about, right? We've always been about that, and I like touching in competitive stuff. I like looking at the competitive scene. I like looking at what tournaments are doing, but it has to make sense in the lore for me to be able to get on board with it. Hence, I instantly read at that Dreadnought the second Walker the second it came out, and said if they call it a Dreadnought, nah, I've had enough. Not that I would honestly walk away from the hobby, but that was the threat I made. Right? Coruscant Khan is the chapter master of the White Scars, and every single chapter master of the White Scars has rode a bike, has rode Moondraken. And now, just because they want to Primarisify the lunatic, he suddenly doesn't have a bike. That's wrong. That's wrong. Would you accept them dropping Chapter Master Dante without a jump pack?
No, I wouldn't. I don't think anyone would. But I can also, if I want to spin this to the positive side, because I'm kind of a glass half full guy. I'm not, but so I guess what I'm thinking is you could say that what they're doing is going to give two variants of the model. They're going to wait till the new Primaris bikes come out, whatever they are, and then create a new sculpt of him on the bike, so you can buy it twice. You can play him on his bike or without. And for the mere cost of $55 or whatever that is in pounds, you can have two copies of your Chapter Master, one on the bike and one without, because sometimes he gets a ride. So
I don't like it.
I know.
I don't like the fact that you have the Chapter Master of the White Scars. He doesn't have a bike. That's wrong. That's categorically wrong. If Logan Grimmar for the Space Wolves gets
Rubicon Marined.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
If they did it with him and they took him out of Terminator armor, tactical dreadnought armor, what were they going to put him in? They put him in
Ravis.
No. Grimnar wears Terminator armor.
But it's much more comfortable.
No.
The boots are bouncier.
No. All Chapter Masters of the White Scars have ridden Moondraken, have ridden the bike. Why has he not got his bike? That doesn't make sense. Their rule is literally born in the saddle. And now we've got a Primaris walking Coruscant Khan who probably can't keep up with all his Outriders. It's ridiculous.
One way to do that is, that there is no real... I was trying to come up with... You're not going to actually, hold on. I'm not trying to win, but I'm actually going to put on my defense attorney hat and try and explain this away. That not all White Scars ride in vehicles. Not all of them are riding across the plains on their motorcycles.
Literally born in the saddle.
Details.
That's the name.
So, but sometimes they have to walk. And sometimes, it'd be kind of hard for the Chapter Master to be driving around in circles as they're walking, looping around, yelling orders. He wants to get off and join his men. So, there's no good reason for this.
It's rubbish.
It's complete shit. But I can pretend.
And the shame of it is I actually really like the model.
It's a great one. The head.
This was like a real the model's the model with the eagle and the sword. It's a really nice. They've done a really good job of him as a model. I love the model. This really sucks that I now like this model that's wrong and I can't accept it, but I like it. The model's really nice. The sculpt's really, really good. The Tiggy sculpt, with the exception of the face, that's really, really good too. I quite like that sculpt. So there's some interesting stuff that they've dropped out. I'm going to put up the page now just to make sure we haven't missed most of it. There is some interesting stuff that they pulled out, but I just there's too many. I don't know how I word this without sounding like a whiny little bitch, but there seems to be too much of a absolute focus on pushing Primaris and selling Primaris rather than staying true to what is their lore. It's almost like selling out a little bit. This is what I'm saying. I'm trying not to sound like a whiny bitch, but it's almost like selling out a little bit. And the chapter master of the White Scars has always ridden a bike. Dante's always had a backpack. He's always had a jump pack, always. Logan Grimnar has always been depicted in Terminator armor, and it feels like that all this stuff that we as fans, as lore nerds in 40k have known forever, is just being tossed aside, and that annoys me.
I see. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there.
Okay.
Insofar as I don't think it's being tossed aside. I think what GW is trying to do is they're trying to, in some ways, solidify the past of the Horus Heresy series. Give a static past. Take the sort of the 41st century lore and sort of try and honor that. But I also think they're really intent on pushing the narrative forward. And in doing that, they're making subtle alterations and changes which are disturbing and disruptive. But I think they've avoided making the mistake of creating too radical a disruption.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think, so that's why we're seeing the chapter master White Scar always rise Moondragon. I get it. But perhaps with the Primaris, with increase in size, Moondragon gets an upgrade as well. Like, they keep the core, the bike, the machine spirit, and then they create something new. I think they're trying to use it as a mechanism to evolve the storyline.
That's another thing, which is true. Someone said a comment as well about how it's only early. We don't know what's... Like Simon's just said it's still only early. They haven't shown all the previews. This is true. Yeah. So that it might be that when the pre-release goes up on Saturday, there is a bike option as well. I can't see it. I can't see them releasing a bike option with Coruscant Khan, having not yet decided probably what their bike options are for Primaris, or not been ready or prepared to release them. But maybe I'm wrong. So they might still prove me wrong, and I might have to eat some serious humble pie next week. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. The model, I mean, I have it up now, right? The model is glorious. It is an amazing model. The Tiggy model is great. The face isn't helping him, but I think that might be the paint job in all seriousness. And it's not often I criticise GW's paint job. I always criticise Forge Worlds because it's dreadful. But that's nice. Like the model sculpt on the whole, I think is really quite nice.
Who last night said that Andrew Waller would have done an amazing job with that face?
Yeah, Waller does an amazing job with everything he touches. I just don't like to tell him that. The Walker, they have said, we are also set to receive their own kits. Indeed, the mystery of the last fusils mentioned in the Illuminated Apocalypse data sheet. But this is the... where is it? What did it say? In fact, it's set up alongside the concealed deployment. Oh, it could be a concealed deployment. The Invicta Tactical Warsuit. That's what it's called?
Yes.
Not a Dreadnought.
Not a Dreadnought.
Tactical Warsuit. So that's interesting. The model isn't horrific. I don't care for it much. Like, I'm not...
Let me have a closed canopy. If I can have a closed canopy, that would get a lot better. Like a glass canopy, I would feel better about life.
I don't even mind the... Like, I don't... I think it's... right, so, controversial, since we're filming with your Grey Knights tomorrow. I would prefer... I prefer this sculpt to the Dread Knights.
Oh, God, any day of the week. The Dread Knight, it makes no sense. It just... Oh, yeah. I have no argument. I have nothing. I got nothing. Like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Thanks for the subscribe, obviously. Dog Toffee Gaming, my new favourite name. I think this is just so they can reimagine the whole landscape without end times. Like, yeah, exactly. I think that's what we've already spoke about, John. I think you're spot on there, mate, as well. From a sales angle, it's existing customers versus new customers, and acquisition versus retention. You're right though.
Yeah.
Like you are spot on, and the shame of it is, and I'll be bold enough to say this now, is that the existing customers retention's not that hard at the moment for us. They had a serious problem with it in 7th edition.
Oh well,
serious problem with it in 7th edition. At the moment in 8th edition, it's
they're back, and they're back in spades. So I had friends that left at the end of 6th, beginning of 7th.
Yeah,
they basically rage quit between the shifts. I had to urge them back into 8th. Now they're back into 8th, jumping with, full bore, both legs on, going to tournaments, buying models, increasing their wall of shame. So yeah, the retention is not going to be hard. But
the truth is, for those guys as well, is what pulled them back in isn't Primaris or Space Marines. None of that stuff. It's not the new Orcs Codex. What pulled them back in was 8th edition as a core rule set. That's what pulled them back in. So retention for those people who experienced 6th and 7th edition and left and have now come back has actually been amazingly good from GW. Yeah. How many people on Discord alone come in and go, I'm returning to the hobby in 8th. Not I'm starting afresh.
Yeah.
I'm returning to the hobby in 8th edition. Now, if you're returning to the hobby, you're not a new customer. Mm-hmm. That's retention. And I think their retention, based on their core rule set alone, is incredible. There's a few things I think they can do. Thanks for the sub, but Buck 1973. There's a few things I can do that I think they can do, which which would also solidify that core group that they're retenting. You know, it's a not English, I know.
I love that, retenting.
It's the new thing. You saw her fast. So, for example, one of my biggest bugbears at the moment is when Chapter Approved 2017 came out. They did a load of fixes, added loads of points in. Yeah, cool. Chapter Approved 2018 came out. They included the fixes in 17 that were points only, but not the actual rules changes. And the FAQs are kind of... There's a bit of a mess there.
Yeah.
What they need to do is go, we're now 3-4 FAQs in, or whatever it might be. We've done 2 Chapter Approves. Let's amalgamate all of this into the new 8th, and if you want to call it 8.5, call it 8.5, into the new 8th 8.5 rulebook, or the new 8th rulebook version 2, and include all these rules changes, include all these updates. Everything that's currently... We had an issue. We were at the team event recently. Right, this is where this comes from. We were at this team event recently, and someone said to me about a rule issue. So basically, it was to do with how a stratagem for Cadians is activated. So Overlap and Fields of Fire for Cadians says that at the point in which an enemy model loses a wound, you can play this stratagem, Overlap and Fields of Fire, for 2 command points and blah, and stuff and things happen. And the player... It wasn't my game. The player fired a weapon and wounded the target. So he rolled to hit, he was successful. He rolled to wound, he was successful. The enemy player rolled his saving throws and failed. At that point, it's a successful wound. However, the player had a Fear No Pain type save, which he then rolled for and passed. Okay?
Yes.
Now, it's been FAQ'd. It's in an FAQ that is a failed wound. You've ignored the damage, not the wound.
Correct.
Okay, so the Feel No Pain roll stops the damage, doesn't stop the wound. So if that weapon would have caused 2 damage, one of those Feel No Pain rolls stops one of those damage, doesn't stop the wound from occurring. And it's in an FAQ. Mm-hmm. And when someone came and asked, my table came and asked me, and I said to him, no, the damage has been caused, the wound has been caused. He successfully caused the wound, but you did negate the damage, but you didn't stop the wound happened. So he could play Overlap and Fields of Fire, even though the enemy model hadn't at that point then taken any damage, right? Yeah. And it wasn't an FAQ, because I've seen it. Could I find it? Could I how?
No.
You go on the community page, you go to 40k FAQs, and you see the scrolling. I couldn't find... In that one, nope, not that one. In that one, nope, not that one. Get my chapter approved out, nope, not... I couldn't find it anywhere.
It's come to the point where we almost have to be digital copies of everything.
With a search feature, for Christ's sake.
So what I'll do is, if I'm going to a tournament, I'll create like a notebook, like a 3-ring binder, which has the data sheets, a printed data sheet of every single unit I have, and then I'll organize it, however. But I also have a copy of the FAQ from my army, all of them. The chapter approved pages that are on it. But I mean, it's requiring a lot of bookkeeping for us to keep track of the rules. And I guess maybe 8.5 would be a solution, and then
amalgamate it all into the big rule book, into the one big rule book. Put everything in there, and all the fixes and changes and everything. I think there was a company that did this before. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Firestorm Armada, and what they did every year was re-release the rule book with all the updates in it. It might have been, I can't remember if it was that gaming system. Now, to some cynics, you were going to go, yeah, well, so you're charging me for a rulebook every year. I get it. Now, I think GW are missing a trick. Mm-hmm. I don't know why their core rules, without the specific missions, etc., aren't available for free. Why not? Why not give... So, you cannot play a game of 40k without a codex. Okay? Yeah. You cannot play specific missions within 40k without the relevant rule books or campaign books. So why not the core rules that they're going to be updating regularly have as a free downloadable PDF from the website? You will still need to buy your physical rule book because it will have all your missions in and all your specialist rules and cities of death and all that kind of stuff. You'll still need to buy your campaign books because it's got your campaign missions in and your campaign storylines and your charts that you can roll on. You still have to buy your codex. You have to buy your army-specific codex. And in fact, if you're looking at Space Marines now, you don't have to buy your codex, but potentially your sub-faction codex as well. So you've now got to buy 2 books. So give us the core rules as a free downloadable PDF. Why not?
But are those available already?
They were when 8th edition launched.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I haven't looked since then. Okay.
They were when 8th edition launched. There was a PDF. I don't know if it's still available on the website now. But the thing is, if it is still available on the website now, you can guarantee that it's the original PDF that they put on the website when it launched. So why not have a live PDF on the website that when they release these chapter-approved changes or these FAQ changes to the core rule set, you can download that main rule book?
See, I have to agree with you. I'm going to agree with you here. Surprisingly, I'm going to agree with you because I was just, as you were thinking that, I was disagreeing with you in my head, and then I happened to glance over and I saw my Grey Knights Codex. And I was thinking of the back page, it has nothing but scratch outs and new numbers written in.
Yeah.
And like FAQ notices, I actually wrote them in there. See, FAQ dated X. So,
but there's another better solution as well, I think. And this is something that baffles me currently. I don't know why they haven't done it. There's got to be a reason why they haven't done this, whether it's a legal reason, I don't know. So most people will have heard of this particular app. It exists. There's others available, but it exists. It's called Battlescribe. Right? Battlescribe is a community-based app. So people from the community make Battlescribe files and they upload them. And there is inherent issues within Battlescribe because the way some people upload the rules is the way they've interpreted them, etc. Yeah. So it's not perfect. If you haven't checked it out, it's an amazing tool. So you download Battlescribe, you download these data files that are built for and supplied to the community by the community. And then you can write army lists and stuff out on Battlescribe. And the one thing that is amazing about Battlescribe compared to using your codex is when things update, points, rules, Battlescribe eventually updates. Within normally a week, it updates.
Sometimes even faster.
Why on earth has a company that's now the size of GW, I think it's trading on the FTSE 100 for the first time ever, why the hell haven't they not gone buying that? That's ours.
Remember that abomination they created, that just sort of half-baked, was it list builder that was just power? It was pointless. So they hired the guy who had done something for that for Age of Sigmar to come up with some 40k. Battlescribe exists. I think part of the reason they might not do it is the reason Battlescribe can work as well as it does is it's crowdsourced. It's outsourced to a large community that uploads, does rules updates, and they have a form of rotating moderators who then will catch rule changes or point values that are wrong. They'll make the adjustments. People have to go to Reddit for it, but I think that might be the reason because it's still time intensive. But
maybe GW buy the product and make it a licensed product and still make use of the community support. Maybe what happens is the community people that are already doing all these updates and submissions, because they're not going to be new people every single time. They're going to be the same group of people, right?
It's the same guys. Yeah.
So maybe what GW do is say, if you submit an update that you have made as a community person and it gets approved on our end, so we don't have to do the update or write the update. You write the update, you send it to us, we approve it, and then you earn yourself a fee.
Yeah.
You've done the hard work. We've proved it. We've proofread it and gone, that's right, that's fine, we're happy with that. There's your payment. We upload that to our system.
Yeah,
GW own the products. GW, it's an authorized GW product. So, and then at that point, you remove the cynic in me. The massive cynic in me says, "Why don't they do that? Because currently they're making a shitload of money from selling books, and as long as people are going to keep, you've seen my shelf. As long as people are going to keep buying books, they're going to keep selling books.
We're going to buy the books anyway, right? And we're all going to buy the special editions.
So what I'm screaming, and we've talked about this before, what I'm screaming for as well, and I mean absolutely screaming for, is a massive dynamic shift in the way in which they work with rules, rule sets, and stuff like that from GW. I don't want them to stop producing codexes. I have no problem with them producing codexes. But what I'm thinking is the hardback stuff that you can buy, the books that they release, are more focused on campaigns, narrative, storytelling, ways in which you can put. So you buy your Space Marine book and you have perhaps a nice thick set £30 book from Space Marines that has lots of fluff and stuff in that they currently do for the units. But what you do is you have a code that you can scan into your official GW Battlescribe app, and when you scan that code, it will download all the Marine data sheets to your app, right? I've thought about this, by the way. And then that means that if they update, because you've already scanned the code, so I have bought the book, you'll get that free update every time.
It's actually not crazy.
And then what they have in the book, instead of all the units in the book and all the data sheets in the book, they have some of that stuff there. But they have, right, this is how you run a Space Marines campaign versus NIDS and versus Orcs. And it makes it a nice thick set book that is full of stuff, full of useful stuff. Absolutely useful stuff. But because the rule sets, which are the things that are currently changing regularly, are digitally downloaded to your smart device, they recognise that as a licensed product that you've purchased, so you will be entitled to the free updates every time they come out.
That would make complete sense. That's something they do in my profession.
Fire me.
Oh yeah. Please don't. No. They do that in my profession. You go, you attend, you get a seminar, you get an omnibus edition of all the rules and regulations, and then you enter a code and you get a digital edition of it, and then the digital edition is routinely updated. So I think that it's eminently doable.
So it's a concept that works.
It is
in other places.
Yeah.
So there's other people have chucked other ideas in a subscription service. Absolutely.
I do a subscription service all day long.
We said this before, right? £5 a month subscription service from GW. £5 sounds a lot. It's not that much. Look at all you get on deploymentzone.tv for just £5 a month. But £5 a month subscription service means that over the course of the year you pay £60. Most of us buy more than 2 codexes a year. Not everybody. I'm aware not everybody. Yeah. A lot of people will buy maybe 2 codexes, maybe even 3 codexes a year. So for those of us that are buying 3 or 4 or 5, we're saving money, and having that subscription service to access all the rules that can be downloaded live. This is the thing. I will state as well, I'm a massive book fan. I like having the hard copy book in my hand, and I'm often perusing law and rules and stuff like that within the codexes. But GW has to realise, we all have to realise that we're moving into a digital age, and a lot of the complaints that we've got are because dinosaurs like me like to have books, and they're impossible to update. With the exception of maybe selling me 50p sticker sheets that I can sticker over the rules change that's the right size, or something akin to that. Richie came up with an amazing idea, which was about having like a Filofax type file system, and you when the page updates, they send you the page and you can replace the page and stuff.
Oh, that would be again, that's something to do in mind. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's also a way that you can slimline your book right down for when you go to tournaments. Take out all the data sheets you're not using, just leave the ones that you are using. You slimline your book. You've only got the rules that are relevant to you at that time.
Yep.
I think the same with the roster idea that we've got. It's the same principle. That everything's on an official, authenticated, licensed product app. Tournaments become so easy, really.
Yeah, it would be, because then you'd be able to easily access the faction rules. That would be a much simpler way of doing it, and there's no reason why you couldn't do it, because they must already have PDF formats of all these rules and all these FAQs and all these changes anyway, either in Word or PDF or some. I think mostly everything WordPressing is done on PDF, but Adobe. But they must exist somewhere. So making them available and updating them, and then having it as a subscription service that you access online, it would make life a lot simpler.
Yeah, John Battle says the rulebook's £50, so £60 a year is reasonable. Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
I think £60, like £5 a month. I think a lot of people will buy into that. And the other thing is I would argue that it's more guaranteed income for GW.
Not only is it guaranteed income, you're probably more willing to risk a digital edition of a text you might not have. You might
for a £5,
for a £5, yeah. And I also think what else it would do is it locks your audience in, keeps them really engaged, and the cost of production for GW goes down, so their profit margin goes up.
I mean, there has to be a degree of. There's probably some reasons why some of this stuff hasn't happened. So thinking outside the box a little bit, what I'm suggesting is if you pay your £5 a month and you get access to all the rules, and if you stop paying it, you lose the access.
Yeah, that's an easy way.
So what will people do normally is they'll pay the £5 and there will be the people out there that will screenshot every page. People will do that, unfortunately, to better use their rules. But on the whole, people are naturally relatively honest on the whole. And people like official license stuff. People like official licensed products. So I think that they need to reinvent the way in which they release rules, and they release our rule sets and our faction-specific rules. And they need to reinvent them in a way that fits in the modern world, and means that so I am massively behind their aggressive updating. Massively behind their aggressive codex updating, rules updating, points updating, mission updating. I'm a huge fan of it. I was a player in 7th edition where it got dropped and a new rule came out, or a new faction came out, or a new formation came out, and you realised that this was broken as shit, and you realised very quickly you just had to deal with it. It wasn't going to change. And it didn't. They left it alone. So they would go, here's a new Riptide wing for Tau. And you look at it as a player who's not a Tau player but plays against Tau regularly, and you think, holy shit, that's going to sting. Like, time to put the toilet roll on the fridge, lads, because that's going to... And you knew that was done. That was it. It wasn't going to change. So a lot of people that complain about the current rate of updates, it's better. Like, having played both, this is better. This is better, especially for if you're not a player who has a regular group of gaming friends and you rely on local clubs or pick up games at GW or even events and tournaments to go to play your games. This is a better place to be, because when they realise that something is super broken and turbo broken and so powerful it's ridiculous, they seem to be working hard to to make it right somehow. I don't necessarily agree with how they're doing it, necessarily. I think there's a lot of stuff that's points changes where there maybe should be rules tweaks.
Well, point changes are easier than rules tweaks.
Absolutely, and that's why I get why they're doing it, but I don't necessarily think it's the most effective way of balancing.
I agree with you there. I think because we see point changes go up, we've seen them go down, we've seen them adjust a couple of times, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes the changes were massive. And I actually think GW has a sort of a perverse but interesting way of doing it. Most of the FAQs and the are after a string of big tournaments or right after them. So they basically wait for the group of players that are going to break the system, that are looking for that loophole to see where where maybe they overlook something. And then they make the adjustments. Sometimes they break up the Nerf bat too hard, but I think they've gotten better with that over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree.
So I think it's interesting because I know tournament players get a whack reputation, but they're really not. They're just looking to maximize the value for the imaginary currency we're spending in the game, which is points. So they look and see, is this overpowered? Did we underestimate what this does? Did we overestimate this? And they try and adjust accordingly. And I think it's kind of useful to use the community to do that. But again, I think they have to give something to us in return. If they're relying on us to find where it is broken or where things are coming apart, and they're trying to address it, they need to help give us a way to keep up with the changes they're making.
Here's an interesting question for you, which is slightly off topic but on topic. So we're now going to come away with how they do it, because they might not even care what we think. But just another question for you that goes in the same vein as what you've just... Because you're right. They do use these major events to see what's going on, and they make rules changes. So here's a question. Do you think GW allow tournament play to dictate the way the rule set changes too much?
At first I did, but the more I look at tournament play, it's when people are building lists in tournaments, they're not looking for what's broken and then exploiting the hack. I think that was the instinct in 6th and 7th.
Yeah.
And that was the instinct in the beginning of 8th. You saw the Storm Raven spam. Gilliman and 5 Storm Ravens.
Yeah.
Then boots on the ground. I think as 8's evolved, tournament players that I've seen try to find either underappreciated units, undervalued units, synergies, or a way to stack synergies that I don't think the rule writers would have necessarily thought.
Yeah.
I think something that happens is, and I'm totally guessing because I have absolutely no clue, but I imagine when rule writers are writing, if they're not Matt Ward, is they're sitting there saying, how do I make this army? How do I play this army? He lives in infamy for what he did to the Grey Knights. We're still in the penalty box for what he did. So what they do is they look and they think, if I want to give this army a feel, I want to give this army a flavor, I want to make this unit effective, and they sort of devise and develop rules overlapping. They don't necessarily, in the midst of that, sometimes they can't see the forest from the trees. They're like, I have all these beautiful trees. And sometimes the tournament players, when they're taking this 20,000 foot view, they'll look and go, oh yeah, there's a great path here.
Yeah.
That overall is different. So I don't think they have too much influence. I think they have enough.
Okay.
And I think they actually are accepting the responsibility, because tournament players will say, in America, the meta is a little different than here in a lot of ways. And that's one of the interesting things, the conversations I've had this weekend with everyone, was the differences between sort of the American scene and the British scene. Is one of the things that we say when we find something that seems completely out of whack is, we know it's going to get nerfed. Don't go crazy. We know this is coming. So people are expecting GW to address the deficits rather than waiting in terror to see if GW does something.
Yeah, so, the way we know if something's going to get nerfed is that Mikey from Hellstorm starts playing with it. Then we know it's going to get nerfed. That's how it works.
That's short. He actually is like an honorary American in the way he plays.
Yeah.
You should just come on over. We have plenty of review.
Yeah, he's got the right body type as well. Sorry, Mikey. I love you, really. It is interesting because what concerns me, the reason why I asked that question is because what concerns me a little bit is tournament players do exactly what you said.
Yeah.
They do exactly what you said. They will try and exploit rules to a degree to their benefit. Not in the terms of they're going to try and cheat necessarily. I mean, some do, but this isn't what the generic sort of community does. But they will try and exploit. And when they exploit rules or they find a combination that you're right, the rules writer probably didn't think about,
yep.
And they go, oh, look at this is interesting, and they start to play it, and you start to realise, shit, that's too good, it's much better than where it should be. And then GW changed those rules. That's fine. So that's sort of stage one. Okay, no problem. Said tournament player then moves on and goes, well, this is no longer as good as it was. So I'm going to move on to option B. And here's my next best thing that I can find that is a bit broken or a bit cheesy or the synergy is something that people might not have thought of. And then GW nerfs that. And that train of thought carried on for a while. I thought for the first 12 months, I thought that happened quite a lot. And they did some harsh reactive rules making, which I wasn't a fan of, as most of you that watch this channel will be aware of. And now it's changed, and now we're seeing tournament players who are thinking outside the box a lot more.
Yes, yeah, they're being much more creative.
Which is good for the hobby, because it means that you're seeing a much bigger variation on the whole, and it means that those cookie cutter copy and paste net lists aren't the ones that necessarily always winning events, which is good for the hobby. It's good that people can make something themselves, think outside the box a little bit, go to a tournament, do well, maybe even win the event. My concern is that some of the units that don't deserve a nerfing might see it if that becomes meta or popular stuff in tournament scenes, because of, I don't know, it concerns me that we are for me personally, you're going to disagree because you're an ITC player and you're a tournament goer regularly, but this hobby wasn't originally designed, and the narrative and the lore and the existence of the galaxy that it is isn't designed for tournament play. Chess is a game designed for competitive play. It is simple. There are however many, like, what is it, 16 pieces a side?
Yep.
And both player has the same level of pieces, and the only variable in chess is that one person gets the first go. That's it. So chess can be categorically a competitive game, because a lot of the variables are removed. It's one player gets first go, you're both on clocks, otherwise you have the same pieces. We are basing it 100% on player ability.
Yes.
40k will never be there. The second you have a game that involves a little square cube that you have to roll to see your result, you will never have the ability to be as competitive as something like chess. You just won't.
Absolutely not. You're right.
And even to the point where esports, competitive computer games, if you are a character on a game like Fortnite, Battlefield, whatever you might be, and the player next to you is a character on Fortnite, Battlefield, whatever the game may be, and both of you have the exact same PC, the exact same internet speeds, except most of these esports stuff's all landing anyway, but by the by, it's literally the player that makes the difference, and only the player.
Yes.
Right? There is some, with some of the games, like some of the Battle Royale games, obviously there's other variables in there, like you might find better loot than the other player, and that's a variable, but otherwise it's based on player skill, and that's why it can be competitive, and there's esports that pay massive amounts of money now.
Absolutely correct.
But 40k with dice throwing and the amount of units and data sheets that exist, I don't think can ever really truly be classified as properly competitive. So it concerns me that the competitive scene is then dictating the rules for everybody else. Make sense?
It does, but this is where I'm really going to disagree with you. Absolutely.
Good.
First of all, the competitive scene is necessarily self-selecting. Okay? So you're going into it. If you go into the competitive scene with the intention of playing your favorite army and your favorite units, you know, may God have mercy on your soul, you have made a decision and we all make choices. So I have discovered this the hard way. Now, it was very, very painful. So what I do think competitive play, there is an element of competition, and it is the player. And I'm going to explain the thought process. I'll give the short answer, and then I'll explain my thought process. The short answer would be, if you give me Jim Vessel's list, which is like 60 Plague Bearers, you know, a Relic Contempted Dreadnought with 2 Convergent Beamers, and said, go play this. I understand the fundamental mechanics of it. I could not play it like him, and he would destroy me. And many people would destroy me, because I don't understand the fundamentals. I think what competitive play forces you to do is, and this is why I think now our players instinctually are revolted by it like a vampire to garlic or a crucifix, is that we remove the lore. It is removed from the game mechanic. And what you're saying is you're studying a rule system.
Yep.
Accepting there is random variance. Part of list building in a competitive system is reducing variables. Mm-hmm. How can I reduce the number of variables at play, accepting there's a certain number that won't be ever real? So you study the rules, you study the armies, you look at intuitively how you as a player play 40K. Not in sort of the narrative way when you're with your friends, and I didn't mean to bang the mic, and try and express yourself, but when you're playing it naturally, are you a more defensive mind? Are you more aggressive? Are you more passive? Are you more reactive? So you have to then find an army that matches that and fulfills your very set objectives. And this is where I would almost argue that ITC 40K is not 40K as we know it.
Nope,
it's a different game. We have set missions, set objectives, set goals. Everyone has the same one. The only variables are secondaries. So I think
which you select,
yeah, right, and it switches per army. So I think it is competitive, as it requires on the skill, knowledge, and understanding of the rules, the dynamics, statistics, and probability, and basic intuitive talent in moving your army, understanding movement. One of the things I've learned more, now Winters is an amazing tactician, and I'll say this, I've watched some of his battle reports, and the man, when he decides to turn it to 11, it goes to 11, and he pulls stuff out that, nice happy Winters is a smiley happy guy will suddenly start kicking people's teeth in. And it's kind of nice to watch sometimes. But what happens is, in the competitive scene, it's not so much you're let me rephrase that. You're not necessarily going in there trying to find the hardest hitting list. You're trying to find the most effective list that matches your playstyle, and it means changing armies and doing things you wouldn't necessarily do. You lose that personal attachment that draws us to the hobby and connects us to it, and it connects to one another as a community. So yes, it requires a native skill set to understand rules, statistics, probability, variance, movement. I have learned more from playing ITC games than I have from anything else, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I get that. I get that it is a different thought process. And it's a different way of looking at what you're doing. And I go to events. I've been to a number of events where decisions I've made on the tabletop, competitive players would take me outside and shoot me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know they would. Yeah. Absolutely. Because even when I can't help it. I can't help this. Even when I'm at an event, and I can try and build the most dick-kicking list I possibly can with the models I have, and sometimes I won't do it with the models I have. Sometimes I'll buy loads more just to take a silly list. and I can think competitively before I get on that tabletop. And then the second, I don't know why people might roll their eyes at this, but the second I stand at that tabletop and my army's deployed, there are decisions that I cannot help but take the narrative choice.
Makes sense.
Because I am playing out a battle in the 41st millennium, and sometimes it takes over. And there's things I do. The famous example that Winters tells was against a player called Henny, a German guy I was playing in No Retreat with his Dark Angels, and I had a Demon Prince on an objective, and it was the mission whereby you won't probably know playing ITC all the time, but it's a mission whereby if the character holds an objective, every turn he holds it, they get an additional point. And he was doing basically, if I'd have left that character there for the whole game, I'd have absolutely rinsed him on points. But then he drop podded in some Space Marines that was close enough that if my character moved in advance and it had a relic that allows him to advance and charge, the character could go and chew them, and it's a Demon Prince, and there's 5 Space Marines.
That's what he does.
And I'm like, and Winston's like, no, you stay on the objective. Yeah, there's 5 Marines there. Stay on the objective. A Demon Prince wouldn't stand there and go, he wouldn't. He would go and attack. So and then I moved him off and went, well, what are you doing? You're going to win the game. I was like, yeah, but this makes more sense to me. This is a victory in the eyes of Chaos, in the eyes of Khorne. This is a victory. And that's how I play. And absolutely, I mean, John Battle on the chat said it's a difference between viewing 40k as a game to win versus a hobby. Absolutely. Yeah. The mindset is 100% different. And there's definitely space for both people. It's just, I don't personally think... You smashed the nail on the head when you said that competitive 40k players they take the lore away. They take the lore away from it. They take the story away from it. And it's just a game. Chess doesn't have a story.
Yep.
There's no story. Competitive esport gamers on Fortnite, there's no story there. They're just dropping in to fight each other on an esport game. And that's what competitive players do with 40k. That's how they think about 40k, which is fine. It's just that's why I don't want them to dictate the narrative rules too much. If that makes sense.
I think that's where maybe GW needs to separate narrative rules better from the main rules. But I also say two things in defense of competitive players. One, I have yet to meet. So I've met some of the. I've had the pleasure of meeting some of the really high-level competitive players. Not that they didn't even know my name, but I've seen them and I've talked to them. They know the lore.
They know your name. They will now anyway.
Better than anyone I've ever met. They love 40K as much as we do. And the second is, if you want to know where maybe synergies or rules choices don't work or could be exploited, who better than someone's going to look at it objectively?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's where I think the two communities, instead of being antithetical, they have much more in common than I think they both realize.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of bad blood because, look, the competitive meta can push GW to make foolish choices. But at the same time, it can help. But I am going to say one other thing is that I agree with you. When I look at my Marines splayed out on the table, there is a little person in me screaming, like I have little visions of like storm ravens flying over my head. I turn into like a little child again. There's a part of my mind that even when I look at it, it's instinctual. And it's funny because to play competitive, I had to actively turn that off.
Every time I'm playing, I'm making pew pew noises in my head.
Yeah,
I can't. Every time.
No, it's true. I like even now. Like I was trying to find a way to use drop pods that could be terrain because I so want to drop pod Marine Assault. It's just I bought the.
So and this is the thing, right? So this kind of brings us full circle to the topic tonight.
Yeah.
The new Marine releases. I mean, I've still got some of the new Primaris stuff in front of me now. This is the thing that makes me, like, I categorically think that there is space for both types of player in the hobby. I've got no problems with tournaments and tournament play and competitive play existing. I just wish they would separate the two rule sets out a little bit more, and they would refine and work on them a little bit more as a narrative play set. And I know they have done that. I know that exists within the rulebook, but I want more segregation between the two so that you know what mode you're playing, and that then is more adapted to what it's designed to be. So for me, for example, and I'm not kissing ass here, ITC, I played ITC for the first time this year, like the actual proper rule set, not just being an ITC tournament, but the actual proper rule set. For me, that is the best form of competitive play in 40k that I have played to date. Categorically, the ability to know your secondaries before, and I say know your secondaries, they might change slightly depending on the player. So basically, the way I thought about it was when you build your list, you kind of have to pick 3 to 4, maybe 5 secondaries, and the hope that whatever your opponent is, you can at least achieve 3 of those.
Yes.
Right? And the ability to do that before the game begins and know where objectives are going to be, I think it's key to making a more competitive game more enjoyable.
Yes.
The second that highly competitive game and you're going to a highly competitive tournament against other highly competitive players removes that sort of level of like knowledge and restriction and enters out or brings in more randomness, that can really ruin a player's experience. Because if the objective cards, if you're playing Maelstrom, or the dice rolls for whatever aren't going your way, because we've entered in all this randomness, which for us is what tells us the story and what gives us the narrative, then you can get curb stomped even though you're a good player because the randomness has killed you rather than the actual game itself. So ITC, which removes all that randomness, I 100% think it's a better competitive play system. But what I want to see is that as a rule system on its own, and then narrative stuff, rather than this power level shit that no one really plays, but just being not ITC stuff.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love a clear distinction between the two because I love the chances I've had to play. One of my favorite games was I had a lieutenant with a chainsword holding objective in a Maelstrom mission at the end of the game. And a friend of mine charged his Terminators in, and he held. They didn't have OPSEC. I did. And we were both cheering the die roll because he made a 6-up feel no pain and survived. And it was the most fun I've ever had on the tabletop, holding a corner objective that was very meaningless with a lieutenant. Which was,
absolutely.
So I think a clear distinction would make it better. And also, give the narrative player something more than stratagems. You can use the same stratagem more than once. Great, thanks. But there should be more. There should be additional traits or characteristics or customizations that stack on top of that.
I tell you what, we went up to Say Hi Pools the weekend for a DCTV game, and we added in 3 Cities of Death rules to the game we played. So Say Hi Pool built a table with the Cities of Death rules in mind, but the scenery that he was using wasn't ruined, so you can't apply all of them. But we did apply a few of the rules, just because it added more narrative flavour. That stuff's gold. Like the ability to take what was so we and this is the thing that makes me laugh, right, with 40k is GW go, you've got narrative and open and matched. No one plays one of those rule sets. We were playing a narrative game at Say Hi Pools using match play points to build the lists and adding in Cities of Death rules to make it more narrative for us. And this is what I'm saying. Maybe even you have a table of extra rules that you can pick and choose and drop into your game. I don't know how it would work. But so, for example, the rules we use was that if you are a level above the target, you gain +1 or -1 AP. And if you were in terrain and obscured, mildly obscured, there's -1 to hit. And we added all this stuff in, and it made it excellent. It genuinely made it really, really, really good. I loved it. I absolutely loved those extra bits and pieces. So I want that. And the one thing that I will move on to say, having been fearful that GW nerfed too much from competitive tournament type scene stuff, which is the case, looking at the Marine stuff we're looking at now in the Marine releases, what I'm hoping they may have done with these new codexes, I don't know that they have. What I'm hoping they might have done is they might have looked at how Marines as mono-faction codexes are performing and go, they need to be better. It's okay nerfing stuff if you also bring up other stuff.
Yes.
How bad are your... I don't want to be rude. How bad are your Grey Knights?
Oh God, they're miserable. They are just they're an abomination before God and man. I mean, it's pointless taking strike squads. They're overpriced tactical Marines that you blow on, they disappear.
Yep.
The Terminators are okay, but they're still overcosted. Their smites. Let's not even talk about their psychic powers. I mean, everything's overcosted in their command points. I think Almost Pro Gaming did a great video saying the Grey Knights were the greatest chapter because they're the most humble. They feel so humble that they will pay extra command points for a stratagem that costs Tactical Marines 1. They'll pay 2 command points for them.
Yeah,
right. You know, for a unit that is less, we'll pay more just because we're that humble when we try and contribute. So yeah, it does make me sad. But I hope GW takes that, because you're right. If you nerf everything, you're not improving. You're playing whack-a-mole, right?
Yeah.
You'll be like the IRS and tax lawyers. Tax lawyers find a loophole, exploit it. The IRS slaps them down. It's a never-ending game of slap and tickle that everyone has fun with. We don't want our rule system to bloat like the IRS code, where it turns to this giant mega tax code. We want it to be nerfing and tamping down what's inappropriate and fixing where in the initial set of rules they didn't do it right, or it wasn't what they wanted, or they maybe, and this is still my pet vision, they didn't have a clear vision of how 8th was actually going to work, and they grew as it went on, and now they want to improve upon it and fix some monofactions.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm currently very positive that these codecs are going to come for Marines, and they will be better. And they need, they're doing it already, and they've proved it. I said for a while, really early on specifically, that points changes don't fix everything. You're right. They're the most efficient way of fixing a rule. Absolutely. But they don't, or fixing a unit. But they don't fix everything. And when you look at just even a tactical Marine, and I know we think intercessors are better, but take a tactical Marine 12 months ago, take a tactical Marine now, and looking at the releases that we've seen over the weekend, Tactical Marine 12 months ago didn't have Bolter Discipline, and it didn't have this new crazy combat rule, which I'm definitely not scrolling in front of everybody right now, that's called Shock Assault. So they didn't have Bolter Discipline, they didn't have Shock Assault. So in 12 months, for no points increase at all, they've gained 2 additional rules that does make them better.
Absolutely. So
GW clearly are doing something, and I'm really hopeful that these codexes, if these codexes drop and all we get is Shock Assault and Bolt Discipline, I think I will be a little bit disappointed.
I will be upset because, and it's funny, we'll be upset because we expect more from them. In the oddest turn of events from GW when it came out, when everyone was wary, if they don't evolve and address things the way they have been, we'll be disappointed, which is a testament to where they've been. I think how they've grown since the editions come on, that we expect them and we anticipate that they will address deficiencies and try and make it better.
Absolutely. I really like Shock Assault, and Shock Assault is one of those things as well where, along with Bolt Discipline actually, it does really help Grey Knights.
Oh, immediately. Bolter Discipline changed.
Massive difference.
It actually allowed them to function. It gave them a purpose and a place. As you know, you throw a 10-man Paladin squad out with all Storm Bolters, that's 40 shots.
Yeah.
And
Paladins 2 attacks each? 3 attacks each?
I think it's 2 attacks each, if I remember correctly.
And now if they charge, they get an extra one.
They get an extra one. I mean, and if they have the banner there, they get an extra attack. And if you have Drago, Falchions, they get an extra attack. And you put Drago there, then they're re-rolling all misses.
Yeah.
And suddenly, okay, it's still overpriced, leaving that aside, you can wreck face.
But the points haven't changed, so you're getting more for your points now, at least.
I'm getting more for my points. It feels like I'm getting more.
Yeah.
I feel a little. It prevents, as we like to say, the feel badsies. So
yeah, and the thing is now you look at paladins that are now with bolt discipline and shock assault and they should know no fear, they become a much more narrative representation of what they should be.
Yes,
and so if you potentially drop them by a couple of points, and I don't mean by a lot, because the problem is this is the other thing where I don't have this internal fight. Right? Like Paladin Grey Knights, you shouldn't see 50 of them on the table.
Absolutely, you should never should.
Because that's not how they work. However, so I don't want them to be dropped to a point when you go, Paladins are so good, I'm just going to flood the table with Paladins. However, I want them to be at points efficient enough that you go, I really feel like I'm getting some decent punch for my points here.
It's true.
And we are, even without dropping the points of Paladins, or dropping the points of Grey Knight Terminators, or dropping the points of actually normal Space Marine Terminators who also get these benefits.
Yeah.
You're already feeling like you're getting more punch for your points, because although the points haven't gone down, you are getting more rules associated with those units. Now, I honestly think we saw a massive increase in how many Terminator units were deployed in tournaments and games and events across the world, just because of Bolt Discipline.
Yeah.
Just because of Bolt Discipline. Now you get Shock Assault. So now you're looking at Terminator squads on the charge having 3 attacks each with Power Fists. Now, if they continue to also follow the same, and this will be a very interesting thing that will be in the new Marine Codex, if they continue to follow what I think is a current trend, where they are also removing the complexity of, well, I can reroll 1s and 2s, but I can't reroll 3s because it would be a hit, but actually it's a mitt. And Abaddon was the first one. I mean, they already did it with Balisarius. Cool. Abaddon is now the first one who they've gone, you can reroll hit rolls.
Yeah.
So you can reroll the 3 if you've hit with your Power Fist, but then you apply a -1 modifier and you miss, you still get to reroll that. I'm all up for that for a couple of reasons. Power Fist Terminators are bloody expensive, and it's not going to hurt them to get that extra 1 reroll of the 3.
Yeah.
And secondly, it removes a layer of complexity that we just don't need when applying modifiers and rerolls.
Absolutely. And I think there's something interesting here, and sort of on a deeper level, the narrative is shaping the rules.
Yeah.
GW is using the narrative when the rule, because they're still narrative driven, and I think you see that because they're not playing. They don't feel like Marines, and Marines are supposed to feel something. They're adding rules to make them more narrative.
Shock Assault's right in front of me. I haven't got Bolt Discipline right in front of me now, but Shock Assault's right in front of me, and you know what it's like with stratagems and rules. They have a little bit of narrative because Games Workshop are massively driven by narrative. You're right, and it says the Adeptus Astartes are elite shock troops who strike with the fury of a thunderbolt. Few opponents can withstand this onslaught. It's now, when you read the stories of Astartes in brutal melee and stuff like that, they are absolute tanks. They're war engines, and so I mean this won't ever happen. But for me, tactical Marines should be 2 wound monsters. Yeah, it should be. They are genetically enhanced superhumans with 2 hearts and 3 lungs. They should be. They should have an extra wound. Having said that, people then say, well, what do you do with Primaris Marines who've got 2 wounds? Yeah, but they've also got a 30-inch bolt with AP -1, so you're golden, and an additional attack as well. Yeah, Primaris coming to attack space, so you're still getting more for your points. But for me, Marines need to be tougher, and 2 wound tactical Marines isn't game breaking. 2 wound Terminators are already a thing. Yes, I would give them another wound to make them 3 wounds. Yeah, and I would like to see Terminators where if you overcharge a plasma gun, it doesn't just kill one.
Yeah, it should usually take a wound. I mean, you're wearing tactical dreadnought armor. There should be some benefit to that. It shouldn't kill you as if you had, your lone guardsman overcharging his plasma weapon and rolls a 1. This is, there needs to be.
But like I say, like in all seriousness, with tactical Marines and assault Marines, my honest opinion, if people were to ask me right now to say, what do I think GW are going to do to improve mini Marines? My answer, honestly, is nothing. I don't think they will. I just don't. The big benefit to mini Marines will be if they assess the Marines Codex and realise that 50% of the stratagems are absolute dog toffee and not worth taking, and therefore they rewrite a lot of the stratagems and make them more useful and more command point efficient. I mean, I don't mind orbital bombardment as a stratagem, but I do reject completely the opportunity to pay 3 command points for it.
Oh, I think I used it once in the last 2 years, and it failed so spectacularly I don't think I've ever invested in it again.
3 CPs for that is insane for what it does, because it's still a game of chance once you've spent 3 command points. There's a lot of strategies out there, really odd actually, where you have to pay the command points for the stratagem before you even know if the thing that you want to use the stratagem for has occurred.
Yeah,
and that thing that you're waiting for occurring is in fact still a dice roll. It's really odd.
Yeah, it's like the faith points. You have to spend points to see, and then roll to see if the event happens.
Toys for the Toy God. Darren's asked me, do you think GW will send you the codex and all the supplements? I have no idea, but I don't really want to read all that. Mini Marine, strength 4, toughness 4, 1 attack, 2 wounds, and Primaris, strength 5, toughness 5. The thing is, John, if you do that and keep the points the same, you still won't see any Mini Marines come back, because then Primaris will be so much better. Anyway, we've had a good old ramble.
We have.
And we probably need another beer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's. I mean, we've talked a little about the new releases, the Space releases. I'm super excited about it. I might receive this. I don't know. I have no idea. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. But I'm really looking forward to reading through this, even if it is after it's released. I'm really looking forward to seeing the change. I'm hoping to see lots of changes. I'm also really excited to see narrative-driven chapter tactics for the sub-factions, for the successor chapters. I'm really looking forward to a massive range of variety for Marines, because I think at the moment, my personal opinion is, we see too much just Ultramarines everywhere. Yeah. So I'm really, 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 really hoping. There was a massive, I think it was in Discord, there was a suggestion, just quickly before we do shut the show down, there was a suggestion in Discord that why don't you take Gullyman? So we've said for ages, right, that one of the big issues with Space Marines is that everything's costed in relation to how it would work if it was an Ultramarine working with Gullyman, which isn't fair on a White Scar or an Imperial Fist. Now, Gullyman's currently the only living Primarch the Imperium have got, so why don't you remove the reroll that says all Ultramarines can reroll all to hit and to wound rolls, and all Imperium can reroll ones, to all Adeptus Astartes can reroll to hit and to wound rolls?
He's the Lord Protector. Just get rid of it. Make it apply to everyone.
I'm not saying it's the right choice. It's an interesting concept, because then people can't whinge about the fact that Ultramarines have got Gullyman, because anyone could bring him. Just please, for the love of God, if you're going to do that, paint him blue.
They have Calgar, though.
They do have Calgar, yeah. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you about this stuff.
Oh, it's been wonderful.
We've been doing it all weekend, right? It's been non-stop.
Non-stop.
So a massive, massive thanks to Rob, who's flown all the way across from Boston, Massachusetts, to come and join us for a weekend for Patrons Barbecue. Like I said, we are filming a battle report with him that will be going up on deploymentzone.tv. And I can't wait. We're going to chuck the Eternal Slaughter in old school Khorne format.
Oh, yes.
Against the Grey Knights, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be a blast.
And I want to get that out of the way before Shock Assault actually comes in as a rule. Having said that, the World Eaters would get that bonus.
They get an additional bonus. Yeah, it would be.
So it probably helps you that we're not going to use that rule.
Yeah, I notice I didn't complain.
Absolutely. Massive, massive thanks to Rob for coming and joining us. It's been incredible to have you over. It's an amazing feat for a patron to come this far, and we've got a couple more. There's another guy coming over from Australia later on in the year, another guy coming over from Texas in December. So it's amazing that you guys are coming to spend time with us. And if you guys come over this from wherever you are, if you come over, I will try and squeeze in a game and a podcast with you if I can. As long as I'm given enough notice, we can normally organise that sort of stuff, because it's amazing chatting hobby with people because you're right? The American meta is completely different to the UK, and we were discussing this earlier about the difference in YouTube channels and podcasts and what they focus on. It's totally different. It's really interesting to hear how it's going over the pond with the hobby compared to how we're experiencing it, and the differences and stuff. And it's interesting that our lists compared to yours are so different.
Radically different.
Massively different. So that's really interesting. But yeah, absolute pleasure, mate. And I know the guys who came for the barbecue yesterday all thought it was a pleasure to meet you as well. So
it was a blast. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being the best mother former colonial power any country could ask for.
What more can you get? What more praise can you get than that? I hope you guys have enjoyed this live podcast. Like I said to you at the beginning, we do these on Twitch almost every single week. We very rarely miss. We have missed a couple, but we very rarely miss. They're normally on Sundays or Mondays, and we do have an updated schedule on the homepage on Twitch and on the homepage on Facebook. So if you're interested to know when you can come and join us on these streams, and we are seeing some new people come and join us on the streams, which is really, really good, then please go and check us out on Twitch, search for Warhammer Liam, click follow, link your Amazon Prime account, click subscribe, and come and join us when we're live, because it's really cool interacting with you guys in the chat and having a chat with you about what you think we're talking about as well. Sometimes it's so important we can stumble, and you guys can get us back on track or give us something to talk about. We go, I actually never thought of that. It's really interesting, and it is genuinely really interesting, so I really appreciate all the comments. Equally, if you didn't catch it on Twitch and you still want to add a comment about what we've been talking about, please feel free to comment below on YouTube. I try and get back to most comments or read most comments. I don't get to to all of them, but Mikey P looks at them quite often, and so does Bram, and Rob probably will look at some of the comments on this one as well.
Yeah.
So one of us might try and get back to you if we can. Otherwise, if you really want to interact live, like I say, come and join us on Twitch. If you like what we do with Sit and Talks, but you also prefer battle reports, or you just love battle reports anyway, not only do we put battle reports on Warhammer, and I'm very excited to launch the next one, which is coming soon, but we also put battle reports on deployments.tv every single week. They're great fun. We really enjoy it. DZ's it's an amazing place for all the hobby needs, because we have Sit and Talks, we have painting tutorials, we have big debates, we have top tips, which are tactical top tips from Winters, who says he's not competitive but actually is a little bit.
Yeah.
And we have all the battle reports on there. There's loads of battle reports on there, and some are narrative driven, and some are campaigns, and some are a little bit harder, and there's just loads of stuff on there. And we have an amazing community of supporters on deployments.tv. So thank you to everybody who's subscribed so far. If you want to support Warhammer as a channel more, you can become a Patreon. One of the reasons why this man is sat next to me is because he's a patron of the channel, and an absolute legend of a patron as well. We have an army of them right now. There is a huge amount of patrons, and you will be joining a very, very busy community, a very, very busy Discord community if you want to come and join us on Patreon. And there's other stuff we have. We have discounts for GameMat.eu products, and we have live access to the Element Games rep we have. There's just loads of stuff you get for being a patron. Different levels give you different benefits. If you're silver level, you get to come in and play in the D&D groups. If you're gold level, you get these kinds of opportunities where you can come and film with us for battle reports or sit and talks or whatever you want. And we're trying to get more of you guys on these live streams, because I just think it's amazingly interesting to hear someone else's point of view. And it doesn't matter to me if it's 100% opposite to mine. It's just interesting to hear it. So I love that sort of stuff. So if you want to be involved in that, head on over to Patreon, support us on Patreon, and that's about that, really. I think I've covered everything. Obviously, a huge shout out and thank you to our patrons, and a huge shout out and thank you goes to Element Games, our sponsors, who told me last night that the prize support for the DCT Open Day is supposed to be quite impressive.
I'm sad I'm going to miss that, but I'm sure
you're not flying over for that as well.
Yeah, it's the end of the month. I'm actually at Nova that weekend.
Are you?
Actually, with Chris.
With Chris Bayer, yeah.
Yeah, Chris.
One of our patrons.
Another one of the patrons is coming over to the States. We're going to go have a couple of drinks, enjoy Nova. So, hey, and anyone that's thinking of becoming a Patreon, you'll find a community of absolutely amazing people who are supportive and kind and friendly. And when you meet them in person, you'll find that the people there, they're the same there and on person and live, and you'll become great friends. It's an amazing place, so I recommend it.
Didn't even have to say it. It's just from you.
Yeah, no, and don't worry if you're from the States or from Australia. We have the night crew. Usually around the time Europe and UK goes to bed, the Americans and Australians take over, and it gets very strange. So come on and join us.
Strange, yeah. That bit wasn't in the script, but yeah, it does get really strange. Cool. Is there anything else we want to add, Rob, before we go?
Not at all. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.